Welcome to the Roller Coaster Ride of Parenting podcast. I'm Jenny.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Susanna. And we'll be your hosts as we discuss the highs and the lows of the parenting journey.
We'll be having conversations based on the content from Susanna's book, A Childcare Expert's Guide to Enjoying Your Parenting. Throughout her time as a childcare owner and operator, Susanna has encountered many overwhelmed parents, and she wrote this book to encourage and equip them to be the best parents they can be.
This podcast is an opportunity to share more tips and tricks around the challenges that parents face. It's our hope that through our shared knowledge, experiences, and conversations, we help you to better embrace your parenting and enjoy your roller coaster ride.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we'll be exploring the importance of forgiveness and understanding what this looks like practically. We'll focus on the power of apology and the reality of making mistakes and acknowledging them. Once again, we'll be referring to Susanna's book to guide our conversation, and our hope is that you gain some helpful insight. So, Jen, what is the coolest thing you've had to ask for forgiveness for? Don't lie, mate.
I'm just trying to think. I feel like I apologize most days for something. That's the forgiveness versus permission way of life. Yeah. Actually, I think some of my favorite things is apologizing to my kids.
Okay.
I feel like I'm constantly I'm very, big hands. I talk and I often have trouble not saying the thing that I'm about to say. So then I often catch myself apologizing for what I just said. But what's been really interesting over the years, I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. I raised my voice, or I'm really sorry. I didn't get that. I think my kids are so used to it now.
Yeah.
That Max often says to me, he's like, oh, Mom, that's okay. I didn't even worry. Didn't even mean anything.
Wow.
Or he'll say, I didn't even know that you said that. Thanks for telling me you're sorry though.
Yeah.
But it is really interesting now. They go, oh yeah, well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. I'm like, oh, but it's just such a part of our life, I think.
Yeah.
What about you?
I guess, being brought up in a family where that was said a fair amount from both my parents. And then I guess what challenges me is that getting into my late mid-teens and realizing that my friends' parents didn't apologize and going, whoa, and it kind of shocked me at the time. But lots of people lots of people are scared of actually saying sorry. And so I understand that if that's not, obviously you've come from a family culture where that was a positive thing and you've made it one for your kids. Was that a big thing in your own family of origin? Did your oldies say sorry, or where's that come from for you?
Trying to think. I think we did. Yeah, I think when we were little, we were never a family. When I was little, we were never a family. I don't remember ever getting a bottom smack. In my life. But it was really funny. Some of my earliest memories are being in trouble for something and having a conversation about the consequences, about why that wasn't okay. And I remember one time I said to my dad, listen, can you just smack my bottom and have it over with? Because that's what my friends' parents do, and they don't have to have the conversation. And I was like, but now when I think about it, I think it probably has always been and it's probably why I talk to my kids a lot, and I do explain to them, and I'm like, okay, well, that is the consequence.
Yeah.
And it's a balance, though, I think, of exposing them to, real life and letting them see us, navigating things and saying you're sorry versus, protecting them and, not letting them feel overwhelmed with the bigger situation. So I don't know. It is that it's kind of a bit of a tightrope to navigate with their age.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it is. I think sometimes too, and I know that that's not the case with you, Jenny, because I know you personally, but if we're not careful, we can devalue the word sorry as well by thinking that we can just do what we want to do and then say sorry afterwards, and then the sorry means nothing to the child or whoever it is that we're saying sorry to.
Yeah.
They have to know that you're sincere in it, and they have to know that that you are not trying to manipulate them. I know last podcast we're talking about the power of words, and we definitely can manipulate very easily with our words, and you can even manipulate with the sorry, with
I
the
said
words.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said I'm
Yeah.
sorry. So I said I'm sorry. So you've got to get over it. That sort of attitude.
Yeah.
That's not really sorry. You're not really sorry when you're using the word sorry there. And then when you really are genuinely sorry, and if you say sorry, people aren't necessarily going to think, and your children aren't necessarily going to think that you are sorry. So it's not so much. Definitely the words have the power, but you have to have the genuineness, the authenticity behind those words. And the children, more than anybody, pick that up so quickly. They're so good at picking out when you're not being authentic. So, yeah, it's. I think it's more the attitude of being sorry is just so important, and then you have to have the word as well.
Is it almost that you're accepting that you're wrong? So it's not just I'm sorry, but like I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Is that part of what's going on for you? Like what?
Yeah,
what
I
is so
think
powerful about it for
I
you?
think definitely. I think there has to be that element behind your sorry, is that you're acknowledging that you've made a mistake and that the other person was in the right, or they didn't deserve whatever it was you said or you did.
So that seems to be pretty scary for lots of parents. As I listen to dads, especially, they don't really want to say sorry because it almost makes them vulnerable. Like that. Well, if the kid knows that I make mistakes or that there's a chink in my armor, that they're not going to respect me or they're not going to listen next time, or I need to be the firm one.
I think that's one of the things that I don't know if someone told me to do this or if it's just, but I know that like when I think about apologizing to my kids, like I often will sit down and get on their level and look them in the eyes. And it is a really vulnerable thing. Like it's not a, hey, I'm sorry. It's a, no, listen, I want you to know I'm really sorry. I should not have raised my voice at you. I am really sorry. And not give them an excuse, because you can almost go, I'm sorry, but you really frustrated me, and it puts the blame back on them in some way. But going, listen, that wasn't okay. Like me yelling at you was not okay. And I'm really sorry. And then not expecting them, like if they don't really have to say anything after that. Like they don't have to say that's okay. They can just know that, you know what? I did the wrong thing. And it is a vulnerable. It's kind of one of those spaces. But I think that's where like Max a few times especially, and because he's a little bit older, I just went, oh, we've been doing this for so long. But like where he has, like when he has said to me, actually, Mom, it's okay. Like it is okay, and that's fine. And sometimes he'll even say, I understand you were stressed, or oh, that was really hard, or he'll give me something where he's understood, where he's empathized, and I went, oh, thank you. So it's a really beautiful thing, but it is, you are putting yourself out there, and it's hard.
Did you see that vulnerability? There's so much power in vulnerability. And if you look at what you were just saying about yourself and Max there, Jen, because he is 7 and he's that bit older than Izzy, he's now old enough to work out the authenticity of your being sorry. And then he's also old enough to work out potentially, even before you've said it, why you've done whatever it is that you're apologising over. And so you being vulnerable has empowered Max, but it's also empowered you. And the era that I was brought up with, our parents, I don't think I ever heard my mum and dad say sorry. Maybe they did. I don't remember it. But definitely in the era that I was brought up in as a baby boomer, the parents did not say sorry to their children. Like it was really very much frowned upon, because it was seen that if you give the child an inch, it'll take a mile. That used to be the saying. Give them an inch and they'll take a mile. But what they don't realise is that when you give them an inch, they'll give you a mile.
Yeah.
They actually don't take it. They'll give you a mile. They'll give you the opportunity to make a mistake and be forgiven. But if you're not being vulnerable with that child, then they become protective of themselves. And so then they come out more aggressive than when you're vulnerable with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just reflecting on the fact that it's power with instead of power over. If I say sorry, if I apologise and admit fault, that I'm actually giving power back to my child.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are scared of that child will get power over them. I'm still the parent. There's power that I do still hold over them, but I actually want to share power with them in that moment. And for me, part of loving them is actually sharing power where they are able to cope with it and where it's healthy for us.
Well, you're teaching them how to handle power. You're
Mm.
teaching them how to walk in power. But it is important that you say when you hand that power over, you're sharing it with them. You're not giving them the full power.
Right.
You're actually sharing it with them. And so actually what happens is it increases your power because the child will come with you on that. They won't go against you on that. They'll come with you. So you're actually quite unintentionally giving yourself more power as well. Whilst you're giving them power.
Sorry, I just cut you off. But one of the things I noticed as a youth worker was that the parents that did share power with their children, that their children were more connected to them, and therefore the choices they made, they were less wanting power over their parents. The children that I've worked with over the years that wanted power over their parents is where they felt powerless, and so therefore they were trying to fight for that power. But where power was shared, they were much less. And I know you can take that too far too. There's a destructive side to most things, and if you give your child all the power, you're going to get beat up.
Absolutely. But
there's a healthy side of that. Yeah, absolutely. They'll hang themselves all that rope you give them if you give them too much power. I don't know if I'm making sense in the way I'm trying to articulate that.
It does make a lot of sense though, because when you think about like I think about those times like when I'm like, oh, some of my trickiest parenting moments were when I was doing the stand down, like when it was a force of wills. And if anyone has met my daughter, that is not a will. You don't want to break it or bend it. Like I want to build her up. Like I want to mold it and shape it. And it's one of those things like the more we do that, like I want to increase the relationship and the trust and teach them how to do that, model that versus try to make them do what I want. Because at the end of the day, as they go, they're more and more separate from us. Like I want them to come and ask me how to do things, not me make them do something.
Yeah.
So it's a weird, space as they move through those stages. We've only had, up to 8 now. Like we haven't had a lot of stages yet, but you can see how it is shifting from is to max.
Yeah. Well, I know from my point of view, Ben being our eldest, when he went from year 6 into year 7, what's that, 13, 14 or something. So when he became a teenager, it was like, oh my goodness, who is this kid? Like I don't know him. He's like from planet Earth. What happened to that Ben I used to have, who wasn't a perfect child by any stretch of the imagination, but we all of a sudden
hold on.
but we all of a sudden started really clashing, and I had to realize that I couldn't keep parenting him the same way I did as a teenager, the same way as I did as before he was a teenager. And so I sat down with him and, Rob and I talked it through first, and we realized, like here I was clashing pretty much every time Ben and I looked at each other, we were arguing, which we hadn't had that before. And so I had to realize Rob and I sat down and talked about how we wanted to go forward. And that was the biggest time that I've sat down with Ben and said, look, I'm really sorry. I realize that I've been parenting you the same as your 3 siblings underneath you. They're a lot younger than you. You are now a teenager. I want you to know that your dad and I, we are not intending on having you doing what we tell you to do all the time. We want you to grow up as a strong, independent adult. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving you more responsibility as you get older. And when you show us you can handle that responsibility well, then we can give you more responsibility. But we apologize that we haven't seen that we actually need to change here on how we're parenting you. And it will look a bit different to your brothers and your sister because you are that little bit older. But then as they get older, it will change for them as well. And so as you show us how you can handle the responsibility that we're giving you now, and I can't remember what that was, well, then as time goes on, you're going to become more and more and more independent, and more responsible for yourself because we trust you. We know that you're going to grow up to an amazing young man, but this is the journey we need to take you on because we can't give you all freedom now, but we will give it to you as you show us you can handle it and you're handling it responsibly. And that changed things completely. We went back to having a really good relationship together again. Was he perfect? No. Was I perfect? No. However, it took that angst away from between us. There wasn't that tussle of, and some of it I realized actually came from some of my mum's training of me, where she would say, you can't let them have that sort of freedom because then they'll just go off and make all sorts of mistakes and you won't be there to help them. And things like that my mum used to say. Look, she was amazing. I loved her and she was the best mother that was ever walked the planet Earth. But there were a couple of things like that she said that made me see that, no, Mum, actually that's not right. I need to give him some more freedom now. She was actually one of the ones who would say, give them an inch and they'll take a mile, But I actually learned you give them an inch, but you've got to give them the right inch. Then they give you back the mile. But you've got to choose carefully what inches you're giving them and make sure they actually can carry that sort of responsibility. Because one saying my mum did have, which was very useful for me, was you can't put adults' head on kids' shoulders. So you have to take them through that journey and make sure the head that you're giving them, that they've got the strong enough shoulders to carry it. That's your responsibility as a parent. So you just give them a bit at a time and their head will grow in with the shoulders.
I think what you did in that conversation was, one, you shared power with me, but it was by giving me hope. It was that there's a process here and we're going to give you more responsibility. We're going to give you more power as you show yourself responsible. And then you start doing it. So it wasn't just words, but you start. And so then when you would say, no, you can't do that, but when you're more responsible, you'll be able to. It was like, oh, okay, it'll happen. And I knew I was doing some irresponsible things too, and there were some good reasons. And we've even had the conversation where you allowed some of my siblings to do things earlier than me. Like some of my brothers were allowed to hang out with their friends at their place or whatever, a lot younger than I was, because my mates were rat bags. You and I both knew it. So I wasn't bummed at that when like they were allowed 2 years younger than what I was to hang out with friends, because I went, oh, that makes sense. But there was a conversation. So you didn't treat me like an adult, but you treated me as though someone that was coming into adulthood. So you were preparing me for it.
Yes.
It wasn't, you're the child, I'm the adult.
Yeah.
Suck it up and respect me, sunshine. There was power given over time.
Yes.
And it was conversation. It was relational in the way you went about that. And one of my friends took a step like that when we were living in America. She would say to her teenage daughter, I've never had a 16-year-old before, so I don't know what I'm doing with this, but I'm trying to work it out. So we're going to do this together.
Yeah.
And so she was very relational in that. She still had firm boundaries with that child, but she was talking her through it rather than just like, because I said so.
Yeah.
Which never works.
If you give them the why and the how, it really helps them.
Even if they don't like it.
Even if they don't like it, they will accept it easier if you give them the why and the how. But you have to make sure it's age appropriate. You know, when you're younger, obviously sometimes the no is no just because I'm mummy and daddy, and you need to know to stop, not cross that road because mummy and daddy say no, stop now, you know, rather than go into a long conversation about a car could come and run you over. No, you actually need to know that no is no back then. But then as you get older, of course, it changes.
So as you sit there reflecting, Jen, with the kids at the age they are at for you, how do you go about trying to share power or take the kids on the parenting journey with you? Like, as you reflect on what we've talked about today, because your kids, like mine, are 19, 17 and 9. Your kids are younger, and lots of people listening to us today will have even younger kids.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that journey?
It is interesting. I think because they're 2 years apart, like I often do they do have pretty strong personalities, but I do parent them in a similar way. And I think that was the mistake I made, was because Max was like my first child and very willing to please, like very compliant in some ways. Like he just went with the flow, could have the conversation. She is all kinds of wonderful in a very different way. So actually, like I remember like saying, like doing the same things that I would do with Max and with Iz. I remember her standing me down. Like I'm going, listen, I'm really sorry about that. And she was like, you should be. And I'm like, oh,
Just
my
full of
blood.
sass.
Yeah. And I'm like, my blood is boiling. But then at the same time, I'm like, wow, like there's so much in that that's so positive and it's so beautiful. And there's so much about her. Like it's probably that mix of humility and asking forgiveness and having the conversation, but then really understanding the way they tick, so like I think I've done it differently now. Like I think with Iz, I very much have went, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. And she's like, yeah, okay. Like and I don't necessarily like there's very few times she's apologized to me, like it's very few times, but when she has, it's incredibly, like you can tell it's harder for her to do and she's much more vulnerable. So like that going, oh, it's okay, baby girl, I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but just watching them and navigating it and getting to know them and adjusting the style with both of them is really, it takes a lot of wisdom. We don't always get it right.
No.
Heck no.
No.
Oh, that's cool. No, I love that, the way that you've I've had that same challenge where one of my kids, you can apologize and they're almost expecting it. And like you've done the vulnerable thing and your child doesn't react in a healthy way back.
Yeah.
And actually, and I heard you stay vulnerable and stay healthy in that space. I can say that I've done that sometimes and not others. Sometimes when I've been healthy, I'll be in a healthy spot and my kid will react again. I'm like, I go straight to destructive after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that's been your journey, but
I think me and Izzy clashed because like sometimes because we're so similar, like, but it's great. Like it is one of those things where I'm like all the people in our family, like we rub each other and like understanding how we work. And like I actually think it's a really healthy mix. Like we don't all work exactly the same. Like we don't all respond as cookie cutter people. So it is good. Like, but I have to, it's an effort to understand how they're going to react. And I think it's a really good thing.
yeah, totally.
Even though it's really messy.
I find it interesting how it's often the child that you're most like that you clash with the most. And I guess it's natural because opposites attract.
100%.
And it's really funny because the one that's most like us is the one that we should understand the most. But sometimes they just reflect us a bit too much that, that there's just something about it.
Strengths parenting with parents, often it's the child that's least like them they do struggle with. So it's interesting that you say that because often the child that's like you understand why they make decisions.
Right.
The child that's unlike you, it's like, oh, why would they do that?
Right.
That has been definitely my experience. I find it easier to parent the child that's more like me and the one that's less. But it's interesting, your parenting journey sounds like it was different. Like you found it easier or you found it more challenging. Like we're similar.
Yeah.
So I was the challenging one to parent then in that way?
Well, maybe I just noticed it.
We definitely clashed big time.
We did.
In my early teens.
And until we had that conversation, we did clash then. And I used to think it was because we were so much alike. Maybe it wasn't, but when I guess when I really think about it, yeah, the ones that aren't like me, I have thought, oh my goodness, I can't work this kid out at all. Where are they coming from? But that's where the strength-based parenting is really good, and that's where the love languages are really good. Knowing those things, but though, like the Strength Finders coaching, for instance, I didn't know anything about while I was raising your children. The love language I didn't find out until you were teenagers. But it definitely made a big difference through the teenage years once I understood the love languages, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting. So from the conversation we've had today, what encouragement would you give to parents around forgiveness and forgiveness with their kids?
I guess the thing is to remember that vulnerability is powerful. And when you are vulnerable, you are actually empowering your parenting. You are empowering the child, definitely, but you're helping that child connect with you. You're helping that child understand you more. You're helping that they will actually respect you more if you show them vulnerability. I'm not saying you let them walk all over you. That's not vulnerability. That's just foolishness. And that's going to hurt you and hurt them.
Yeah.
But genuine vulnerability of when you know that you were wrong, and you've made a mistake, whether it be intentional or unintentional, because we will make mistakes sometimes intentionally, just out of sheer frustration, and sometimes we'll do it completely ignorant that we've made the wrong decision or said the wrong thing. But when you apologize, it's just amazing the different level that the relationship will go to with your children. And I would say that vulnerability is one of the strongest things you can do. I think people that are willing to be vulnerable are much stronger than people who are frightened of showing a weakness. Simply because whether we like it or not, we will always have weaknesses somewhere along the line.
Right.
So if we live that lie that we don't have any weaknesses, then when the children see those weaknesses, they are going to stick out a mile, and the kids are going to really notice them, and they're probably going to play on them. But when you are totally vulnerable to your children, honestly and respectfully and honorably vulnerable with those children, they will respect you. They will treat you with honor. They may not necessarily bang straight away, but I'm talking about in time. As they grow and as they mature, they will treat you with respect, and they will treat you with honor, because they appreciate it. I don't know a person on the planet Earth that doesn't appreciate a genuine apology. And if there are people like that on the planet Earth, and they're not real wise, and potentially they've got a lot of problems in life, because it really is one of the most powerful things you can do as a parent, is be vulnerable to your children and say, I'm sorry when you've made a mistake. And they will then in turn do the same with you. Maybe not as little ones, but as they grow, they will. And I see it now in my grown children. They don't have a problem apologising to Rob or myself if they make a mistake, because they know that they're safe in doing that. And then there's healing. You can't have healing in a relationship without an apology, and it sets you free, and it sets your child free.
It's good. It's good. Thankfully, it's mainly the other three that have to apologise. I don't make mistakes very often, so
that's a good thing.
So, Jen, as you reflect on today's conversation, what's come up for you? Like, what have you discovered or learnt from today's conversation?
I just think it's probably like a self-awareness cue to remember that. Like, because I think about we're still in the middle of this. Like, it's not something that, go, oh, we do that well all the time. It's very much when I'm thinking of examples, they're more where I haven't done it well than the times I've nailed it. So it's just that continual reminder to be really intentional with saying I'm sorry and being open and putting on my humble pants when I'm talking to my children, that space. So, thanks for the reminder.
I guarantee you though, Jenny, that your children remember more the times where you have apologised more than what they remember the times you haven't apologised. I guarantee it.
Yeah, true.
That's what kids do with their parents.
Which is a really good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's a beautiful reflection. I love we're in the middle of this. It's not over yet. I think parenting is a lifelong journey. Like, I've had some cool conversations with Susanna about that, and while I have two in their late teens, it's just the beginning of a new stage. It's not the end of parenting. So different apologies, different things to apologise for.
Harder apologies.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, at my age, I still apologise to my kids when I need to apologise. And I still have times when I need to apologise, because this roller coaster ride of parenting is not, we don't do it perfectly, but that's how we do it perfectly, by making mistakes and apologising genuinely and then going forward from there.
Yeah, so thanks, Jan and Susanna, for your wise words today. I've learned a lot just listening to you guys, and just being able to reflect on my own parenting as well around forgiveness. So next episode is going to be an identity, part 1. And at Little Miracles right now, we are really trying to produce even more content for our parents. So if you'd like to go to our YouTube channel, Little Miracles, we've actually got a daily program, 20 to 30-minute program for preschool children. That's amazing. My sister's heading that up with our beautiful team, and they're doing an awesome job. And then I'm also putting a weekly program called Messy Thriving, which is just that, trying to thrive in the midst of the mess. So check us out, and thanks for being here tonight. And remember to enjoy your roller coaster ride.